Returning to the 1980s, I quietly changed the person I most wanted to marry to the notorious playboy of the compound. My political commissar father was somewhat surprised, but he agreed to my choice. In the previous life, my commissar father asked me which of the many sons of the government compound I liked most. I blushed and spoke Evan's name. My father nodded. Evan grew up with you, they're a perfect match. You two were raised together, I believe he will treat you well. After that, Evan and I became engaged and married. The wedding was a huge event, even the leaders sent their congratulations. But only half a year into the marriage, Evan submitted a request to assist in Xinjiang, saying he wanted to serve the motherland. He not only left me alone to care for my parents-in-law, he also cut off contact with me when my father was falsely accused of corruption. I had just endured the grief of losing my father, and then I received the dreadful news that he had died in a flash flood. Crushed by the double blow, I hanged myself. Unexpectedly, 40 years after my death, an elderly couple with white hair came to pay their respects at my grave. The Evan who should have been long dead was holding my cousin, standing before my tombstone. Clara, faking your death to deceive you was my fault. Marrying you back then was only because my parents demanded it. The one I truly loved all along was Vivian. It's all my fault. Just please stop clinging to her. Direct all your grievances at me. It turned out they loved each other to that extent. They would abandon their identities, fake their deaths to escape, and still vow to stay together for life. They even superstitiously believed that it was my posthumous resentment that caused my cousin to get cancer. I learned the truth, let go of my attachments, and dissolved into the world. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day my father asked me whom I fancied. Clara, among these lads in the courtyard, which one would you most like to marry? Looking at my vigorous father before me, I couldn't help but burst into tears and fling myself into his arms. In my previous life, because my mother-in-law feared my father's corruption case would implicate the Shin family, she locked me at home and didn't let me out until after my father's funeral. It cost me the chance to see him one last time. I had to cling to a memorial photo and cry until I fainted. I quickly raised my hand, wiped the corner of my eye, and said to my father, I want to marry Alex. My father was taken aback. Have you thought this through? Didn't you used to shout when you were little that you'd never marry anyone but Evan? I sobbed uncontrollably, yet kept nodding. My father, not knowing why I was crying like this, could only give in. All right. In a couple of days I'll go ask advisor David what he thinks, okay? Don't cry, daughter. After drying my tears, I had just stepped out of the courtyard when my childhood friend Sophie, looking clearly annoyed, ran over and grabbed me. Today you were the one who organized everyone to paint the wall murals. How come when your cousin says she wants to bury a time capsule, you go along and bury it? She's always trying to one-up you, stealing your spotlight. Can't you see that? Back then Sophie often voiced her displeasure with my cousin Vivian, but I never took it to heart. Now that I think about it carefully, she was right. The summer I was 13, in front of the courtyard kids, she yanked down my bra strap and, looking solicitous, said, Clara, your underwear is already worn out. Ask your mom to take you to buy a new one. She knew full well my mother had been dead for 2 years. At 18, the cadres of the compound and their families were sent to the countryside to do farm labor. On a break, Evan and a group of boys were going to the river to catch fish. I tagged along like an eager puppy, and Vivian came too. I couldn't swim, so I stood motionless on the bank, but someone shoved me from behind. In winter I fell into the icy pool and nearly drowned. Looking back now, it must have been Vivian. This time we were painting a family planning mural on a wall. Halfway through, Vivian suggested we bury a time capsule. Write the name of your beloved inside. If someone's wish came true later, they'd dig it up and everyone would share in the good luck. I thought it was fun and agreed. When I was reborn I had just written Evan's name, hurriedly switched the paper, and wrote Alex's name instead. Sophie was about to say a few more cutting things when Evan walked over. She immediately puckered her face and scampered away. Evan looked at me, his tone unyielding and resolute. Clara, give up the idea of marrying me. I will not marry you. I was taken aback and about to explain. He spoke before I could. The one I've always loved is Vivian. If you can let us be together, out of what we once were as friends, I'll invite you to the wedding. At that, Evan's expression went cold. If you refuse, we need not have any contact in the future. But in my previous life he never said those things. Seeing the complexity in Evan's eyes, a thought popped into my head. Could it be, he was reincarnated too? After Evan finished speaking, he stared at me without a word, his gaze full of warning. Even knowing the truth, that caution still stung. Whether in my last life or this one, when I asked my heart, I knew I had never done anything to betray him, Evan. He insisted on going to assist Xinjiang, so I took care of my parents for him. My father-in-law seemed kind, but in truth he was a male chauvinist, and my mother-in-law was even mean and snobbish. Before my father's accident they were at least polite to me, after it happened they dropped the act completely. I knelt and begged them, crying, if they couldn't help, at least let me see my father, yet they pretended not to hear. If Alex hadn't occasionally sneaked over to see me and kept me updated, I probably would have long ago lost the will to live. So I waited for him year after year, to the point that I couldn't even attend my own father's funeral. In the end, what I got was them walking hand in hand to my grave, telling me that if I was dead I should behave myself and stop entangling the living. What I got was his hatred now and his wary distance. Thinking of the suffering I endured because of him in my previous life, my chest tightened. I no longer felt like speaking to him kindly. I curled my lips into a smile of mockery and said, if you have time to warn me here, you might as well think about how to persuade your parents. After all, the daughter of the political commissar and the daughter of an out-of-town contractor, you don't have to be a genius to know which way they'll choose. No one understands how mercenary my mother-in-law is better than I do, someone who once was a daughter-in-law of the Shin family. Evan thinks that if he severs ties with me early in this life, he can smoothly marry Vivian? In his dreams. Evan glared at me with a dark face. Vivian saved my life before. Just that alone, being my lifesaver, is enough for my parents to agree. My breath faltered, and I laughed at myself. What a coincidence. But I saved you too, so why, in both lives, did you choose to betray me? I said nothing more. Evan turned and walked toward Vivian. Watching his back, all the things I had deliberately ignored in the past life surfaced one by one. I don't know when it started, but when Evan came to my house, he was no longer looking for me, he was looking for Vivian. Evan celebrated his birthday, and the first slice of cake he cut off, no matter how far, had to be handed to Vivian, while for my birthday he gave me only an ordinary fountain pen, telling me to study hard. Yet I was delighted, treasuring it as if it were a precious keepsake. But that evening, he took out another carefully wrapped velvet box and gave it to Vivian. It was a very exquisite bracelet. He said that because Vivian wasn't here on her birthday, he was giving it to her early today. At the time, naive as I was, I thought his concern for Vivian was a halo effect from our relationship. Now it seems I was the one basking in reflected glory, an annoying crow taking the credit. What are you thinking about? I've been calling you for ages. Alex waved his hand in front of my eyes and I finally snapped back. He followed my gaze to Evan and curled his lip. You really like him that much? What? Alex muttered something under his breath, I couldn't make it out. It's nothing, Alex laughed, nudging me forward. I'm saying, the crew's slacking off here, watch out or I'll come after you. He deliberately led me over to Evan, though his own face didn't look good. I sighed helplessly and looked up, meeting Evan's gaze. He was helping Vivian with the ladder. After glancing at me he quickly looked away. Vivian, I'll go get you another color. He looked up at Vivian, who was filling in the paint, his expression soft as he gently reminded her, if you're scared, come down first. I'll be here to hold you when I get back. Vivian smiled and nodded. Don't worry, I know. Go ahead. I couldn't be bothered to care whether Evan was avoiding suspicion or something else. I crouched down and focused on touching up the color. Above my head, Vivian suddenly cried out. Immediately after, a heavy wooden ladder toppled toward me. I instinctively shut my eyes and raised a hand, but the expected pain never came. When I opened my eyes, Alex had rushed over and caught the ladder. But before the ladder hit, a bucket of red paint fell from above and drenched me, leaving me looking a complete mess. Vivian fell to the ground. She hadn't been standing high, so she only twisted her ankle and scraped her palm a little. A short distance away, when Evan turned and saw her, his face changed dramatically and he sprinted over. "Vivian." He didn't so much as glance at me as he bent to help her up. Vivian leaned weakly against him, teary-eyed, looking at me with a voice full of hesitation and disbelief. "Cousin, why did you shake the ladder's legs to make me fall?" The paint dripped down from my hair tips as I froze at her inexplicable accusation. Evan frowned, his eyes full of anger as he glared at me. "Clara, you've gone too far. This is deliberate harm." A cold chill ran through me. So he could be so blindly defensive of someone? I remembered in my previous life, just a few days after we married, I came home one night and was beaten with a sack over my head. Lying in the hospital bed, I cried for Evan to find the perpetrator. He merely calmly peeled an apple and, impatiently, said, "Behave yourself lately. They didn't rob you of anything, probably just venting. You're fine, aren't you? Isn't that what's important? Don't keep thinking about getting revenge on others, and go out less. What if something happens and my parents look for you?" I stared at him with wide eyes. Multiple comminuted fractures all over his body, his face so swollen he could barely speak, and he calls that being fine? And I only wanted justice, to see the other party brought to law. But now he doesn't even ask, he's already rushing to stand up for Vivian. All eyes fell on me. I let the paint slide down my cheek as I stared Evan straight in the face. "Do you really think I'm the kind of person who would do something despicable?" Evan stiffened, then fell silent. The next second, the Vivian in his arms staggered and pitifully said, "Evan, my ankle hurts so much." The hesitation in Evan's eyes vanished instantly, replaced by anger and disgust at having almost been swayed. He lifted Vivian, his face cold, and said, "If it were possible, I'd prefer you weren't. As for everything else, take care of yourself." With that he turned and walked toward the medical room without looking back. I looked down and smiled. Foolishly I had thought that even if we couldn't be husband and wife, we'd still have the bond of growing up together. Luckily, my love for him had long since been worn away. I turned to go home. Alex took a step toward me, then paused, stopping where he was. After I got home, I washed my hair several times before the paint came off. Sitting on the bed, I let out a long breath. 2 more days and I would finally cut all ties with the Shin family. But early the next morning, Evan pounded on my door with fury on his face. "Clara, did you tell your uncle to call Vivian back to get married?" In all my years knowing him, it was the first time I'd seen him so out of control. "I didn't." I couldn't be bothered to argue. Just as I was about to shut the door, Vivian barreled in, fell to her knees at my feet and wailed, "Clara, I know you're still angry with me, you can hit me or scold me. I fell on my own yesterday, it had nothing to do with you. Please. I'm begging you. I really don't want to become a replacement wife for a 40-year-old man. Have mercy and let my sister go." She was about to kowtow to the ground. I frowned and stepped aside. "What evidence do you have that I filed the complaint?" I couldn't stand her staged performance and blurted out in defense, but a ringing filled my ears. For a moment the world spun and my left cheek burned with a fierce pain. Evan's slap had been delivered with full force. "Clara, how did I never see how cruel you are before? I've only ever felt sibling affection for you. I didn't want to marry you, and yet you insist on destroying Vivian." I covered my face, looked up at him, my gaze as cold as ice. What right did Evan have to call me vicious? With the excuse of parental duty, he had buried my entire life. And yet he was the one benefiting. While spitting on me for breaking up their match, he stepped on my corpse and, with a clear conscience, spent decades being affectionate with Vivian outside the home without returning. I trembled with fury, not yet having the chance to speak. Evan was grabbed by the collar and spun around, and then a fist slammed into his face. It was Alex. Usually he put on an indifferent air, but now his face was dark and his voice full of suppressed rage. Get out of the Wren house right now. Evan lost his temper too, his eyes reddening as he spat a mouthful of blood and was about to strike back. But at that moment, Vivian, who had been kneeling on the ground wailing, suddenly went silent, her body swayed and she fainted to the floor. Panic instantly filled Evan's eyes. He scooped Vivian up, shot a glare at Alex and me, and ran out. I calmed myself and called Alex in. He walked straight to the kitchen, grabbed an ice pack, and came back. I stared at him, stunned. Alex clicked his tongue and, with no patience, pressed the ice pack against my left cheek. That bastard Evan hit you and you just stood there letting him? Idiot. This isn't over with him. Just wait and see how I deal with him. Seeing me grimace from the cold, he finally let out a snort of laughter, his expression softening, but he still stared at me and sighed. Watching Alex's familiar look of worry. Memories I hadn't paid attention to during the days I chased after Evan came flooding back. The him who, at 13, put a coat over me and threatened everyone nearby not to look, the him who, at 18, swam toward me recklessly and grabbed my hand tight amid the turmoil. The him who climbed over the Shin family wall in another life to comfort me, the him who, though he'd cried for nights on end and hadn't slept, still mustered the strength to arrange my funeral. The him who scoured everywhere for evidence and pleaded with people to clear my father's name. Every year on my birthday he would appear at my grave with a gift, nagging at me. My eyes filled with tears as I looked at Alex earnestly. Thank you, Alex. Tomorrow, you must come. The next morning, Father changed into his suit and sat in the living room. The door was pushed open, and it was Mother-in-law who came in. She carried a basket with eggs and 2 skewers of pork, and Evan followed behind her. Mother-in-law smiled as she came over and took my hand. Clara, we've heard about what happened the other day. That brat is completely out of line. Last night your uncle gave him a good beating. Don't hold a grudge over such a small disagreement. Think about how long you've all known each other, right? Once you move in, Auntie will definitely treat you like her own daughter. I sized up Evan. Other than the punch Alex landed yesterday, I couldn't see any other injuries. I gave a dry, indifferent smile and calmly withdrew my hand. Seeing my mother-in-law now, I could only recall her ruthlessness in my previous life. Her smile froze for a moment. She was about to speak to my father. A commotion rose at the door. A group of childhood friends filed in carrying the betrothal gifts, each one beaming with joy. Oh, isn't this perfect timing? A family with a daughter is sought by 100 homes. Clara is such a fine girl, we want her in our family too. Alex's parents, Evelyn and David, stepped out from behind the people grinning. Clara, don't worry. I know my son, his heart must belong to only you. Besides, Alex grew up with you, so think about him too. Usually lackadaisical Alex obediently stayed close to his parents this time, nervously glancing at me. Seeing that I was just staring wide-eyed at the betrothal gifts in the courtyard and saying nothing, his mouth twitched downward, but he still straightened his back. Evan sneered coldly when he saw Alex like that, folding his arms with a look of complete confidence. Under everyone's gaze, I kept silent and stepped toward Evan, one step at a time. His smile grew increasingly scornful and contemptuous. But when I stopped in front of him, I broke into a grin. What makes you think I'd still choose you? The corner of Evan's mouth froze in that raised curve. He clearly hadn't expected me to say that. His Adam's apple bobbed twice as he was about to retort. I turned and, smiling, ran toward Alex. I threw my arms around Alex's neck and hung on steadily, my cheek pressed against the warm hollow of his throat. My voice was clear and firm. I will marry Alex. Alex froze for half a second, then his arms circled my waist securely. His palms held a familiar warmth as he gently patted my back, as if silently backing me up. Our childhood friends around us instantly erupted, some whistling, others laughing and teasing. Evelyn laughed until her eyes narrowed to slits, tugging my father's arm as she chattered, "Look at these 2 kids, they've always clicked since they were little, how perfect they are." Evan's face turned completely black. He took 2 steps forward, his tone thick with self-important certainty. Clara, have you had your fun yet? Yesterday you had Alex hit me, and today you teamed up with the Cheen family to put on this show. Aren't you just trying to force me to marry you? I tell you, it's impossible. His words stopped the jeering instantly, everyone's gazes snapped to him. I looked up from Alex's arms at his I've seen through everything expression and couldn't help but snort. I reached for Alex's collar, stood on tiptoe, and kissed his cheek. Alex's ears flushed bright red. I didn't have time to feel shy, I just stared at Evan, my tone calm but edged. Evan, don't think so highly of yourself. I chose Alex because I want to marry him, not to pressure you into anything. Evan was about to say something else when Vivian stepped forward, took my hand and congratulated me. Clara, congratulations. Seeing you find your true happiness really makes me so happy. Hearing the emphasis on true, I gave her a half smile and pulled my hand away. Alex stepped forward with a cold face and stood in front of me, fishing a videotape from his pocket and waving it. Vivian, Clara tried to keep things quiet out of respect for you as her cousin, but some people just love to make a scene in front of her. I'm not patient, I can't stand it. Some things that can't be explained should just be watched. Saying that, he expertly found our old VCR and connected it to the aged television. Though the image was blurred and flecked with snow, the human silhouette could still be seen clearly. It was the day we were painting the propaganda mural on the wall. I had been crouched on the ground the whole time filling in the color, I hadn't even touched the ladder or its supports. Vivian was standing on the ladder, and just before she fell there was a distinct motion of her raising her hand. She tipped the red paint can toward me, and only after that did the ladder begin to wobble. After that Evan ran over, stood beside Vivian and pointed at me, speaking excitedly about something. Now, watching the stubborn, slight figure of me on the monitor, Evan felt a strange prick of pain in his chest for reasons he couldn't explain. Vivian. My father's face went cold the moment he looked up, he pointed at my trembling cousin, his voice laced with anger. You've gone too far. I'm sending you back right now, and don't ever come to my house again. Vivian turned deathly pale, hastily clutching Evan's sleeve. Tears spilled like beads on a broken string. Evan, I didn't mean to, it's just the ladder was slippery, my hand slipped and... She certainly hadn't expected that the compound surveillance footage could be retrieved over something like this. But Alex was not as irresponsible as he seemed on the surface. He acted like a joker all day, but in truth, no one knew the people in the compound better than he did. The security uncle who ran the cameras was practically on brotherly terms with him, borrowing a tape was nothing. Evan's face went pale then flushed, but he still instinctively stepped in front of Vivian. Fine, consider this me owing you. I'll apologize to you on Vivian's behalf, do with her as you please. I'll take the blame for anything. I sneered coldly, such deep devotion. If you're going to apologize, at least show some sincerity, can't you bow? Thinking of the wrongs I suffered because of him in my past life. Not making him kneel and kowtow to me in front of everyone was already the last shred of dignity I had left. Evan drew a deep breath and, under everyone's gazes, gave me a deep bow. I'm sorry, Clara. Please forgive us. I nodded expressionlessly. I accept, but I do not forgive. You may leave. Evan stiffened, his gaze sweeping over us as he spoke sharply. Fine, whatever the case, Vivian is the woman I, Evan, love. The apology has been made, from now on we owe each other nothing. A chill flickered through my eyes. Owe each other nothing? What you owe me could never be repaid in 2 lifetimes. Tears glinted in Vivian's eyes as she looked at Evan with awe. Evan, thank you. Evan looked down at Vivian like that, gritted his teeth, and seemed to make up his mind. Mom, I'm going to marry Vivian. Are you crazy? His mother rushed over and slapped him, stamping her foot. What are you marrying that girl back for? She's so wicked. But Evan stiffened his neck, took Vivian's hand, and headed for the door. Mom, my mind is made up. Watching their hurried backs, I felt not a ripple of emotion, only the sense that I had finally completely freed myself from the mire of the past. For the next few days, my courtyard was filled with festive cheer every day. When Alex accompanied me to pick out wedding candies, he kept shoving different flavored sweets into my mouth. He even joked that when we were kids I always stole his candy, and now he was letting me eat my fill. David, unusually free from work, joined Evelyn and my father to discuss the wedding schedule. The three of them would argue now and then, each wanting to make sure our wedding was a grand affair. The Shin household, by contrast, was in constant uproar. According to Sophie, Evan had staged a hunger strike at home to force his parents to agree to marry Vivian. He lasted 2 days before he couldn't take it, yet he still forced himself to confront his parents. Later I heard my father had bought a ticket for Vivian and planned to send her away. Evan then threatened that if his parents refused, he would leave home with Vivian and never come back. Others didn't know, but I knew all too well that he wasn't just saying it. But he was his parents' only child. In the end they couldn't bear to refuse, so they pinched their noses and agreed. Not long after, Evan started asking around about the date of our wedding. When he learned there were only 3 days left until ours, he decided to schedule his wedding for the exact same day. I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that. Alex squeezed my hand. Let him. We'll do our thing and let him watch and envy. On the wedding day, Alex arrived at dawn with his childhood friends to fetch me. When he slipped the ring onto my finger his hand trembled, but his eyes shone like stars. Our wedding ceremony was proper and perfect. We bowed to heaven and earth, served tea, then went to the state-run restaurant next door for the banquet. 20 tables were filled with guests, my father's and David's colleagues and neighbors, each smiling as they offered their blessings. By contrast, the Shin family's arrangements were hasty, and his parents were unwilling to manage things. They only set up a canopy in the courtyard and placed 7 or 8 tables. The dishes were just a few homely plates, and there were hardly any guests. Vivian wore a rented red dress and her makeup had run. Watching the lively scene on our side, her eyes were full of envy. I felt a pang in my heart. Evan, who had worked hard all his life, had finally married the girl he loved, yet he couldn't give her a decent wedding. It was even worse than the one in my previous life with me. After the wedding, Alex and I returned to the Chin residence. Just as we reached the gate, I saw Evan standing not far away, holding a wine glass, his gaze fixed on me with a complicated expression. I ignored him and turned to speak to Alex. The wind lifted the hair at the nape of my neck, revealing the faint burn scar. The moment Evan saw the scar, his face changed dramatically, the glass slipped from his hand with a clatter and wine spilled everywhere. Ignoring Vivian's attempts to hold him back, he rushed over and grabbed my wrist, his voice trembling. Clara, where did the scar on the back of your neck come from? Seeing this, Alex yanked Evan's hand away and stepped in front of me to protect me, his face so dark it seemed to drip. Evan, today is my and Clara's wedding, don't make a scene. Evan seemed not to hear, his eyes fixed on the nape of my neck as he kept muttering, how could it be you, how could it? His father hurried over to smooth things over. Evan, you've had too much to drink. Apologize now and come home with me. Only then did Evan come to himself. He mumbled a dazed sorry and was pulled away by Vivian. As they left, he kept glancing back, his look full of bewilderment and unease. That night Sophie messaged saying Evan and Vivian had a huge fight at home. As soon as they returned to the Shin residence, Evan dragged Vivian into a room, shut the door, grabbed her shoulders and said coldly, Vivian, do you remember how you saved me back then? Vivian thought he was about to reminisce, and with a happy, shy smile she took his hand. Of course I remember. That day you were trapped in the house by the fire, I rushed in and shielded you from a burning plank that was sparking. I also pulled you out from under the boards. When you woke up, you said you would never forget me in this life. Evan's thumb lightly traced the old scar on the back of her neck, his eyes probing. Yeah, you gave me the only wet towel you had at the time. Without it I would have choked on the smoke. Vivian didn't hesitate to nod and snuggled into his arms, acting cutesy. So Evan, you have to treat me better from now on. But those neighbors in the compound are unbelievable. Why does everyone go to Clara's wedding? It makes our gift money look paltry compared to hers. Evan, you have to come with me tomorrow to buy a dress. I refused to be outshone by Clara. No sooner had she said that than Evan's expression went completely cold. He snatched Vivian by the hair, jerking her head back, his eyes full of fury. You lied. Even now you still want to compete with her, how dare you? Vivian cried out in pain, Evan. What are you doing? Evan sneered, his voice laced with hatred. Vivian, is it fun to toy with me? Do you feel satisfied seeing me do so much for you? Even in the fire I couldn't see clearly, but when the little girl who saved me ran in, she wasn't carrying any towels at all. You were never the one who saved me. Vivian's face went deathly pale in an instant, her eyes darting away, no longer able to put on a pitiful act. But the lie had been exposed. After a moment's thought, she gave up pretending and, throwing caution to the wind, shoved Evan and screamed, so what if that's true? What does it matter if I didn't save you? Didn't you still marry me? We are legally married now. You can't get rid of me for the rest of your life. Evan was provoked into a blind rage by those words and raised his hand to strike Vivian. Vivian wouldn't be outdone, she grabbed a teacup from the table and hurled it. For a while, chairs and tables were overturned and porcelain shattered around the room, the commotion loud enough to rouse the neighbors. His parents wanted to go inside to persuade them not to make a scene, but the door had long been locked and wouldn't open. Seeing this, the neighbors decisively called the police. Before long, the officers had taken the two who had been wrestling away. Because it was mutual fighting, both were given 15 days of administrative detention. When his mother heard the news, she cried as if she would die, cursing Vivian as a bringer of misfortune and saying the family was unlucky. When Alex told me about it, I only nodded lightly. Then I urged him to study. When the college entrance exam system had just been reinstated a few years earlier, Alex hadn't taken it seriously. I, too, had only followed behind Evan, my mind never on studying. In this life, I decided to push Alex to take the Gaokao with me. At first Alex was reluctant. After I gave Evelyn a glance, she slapped Alex's thigh and, half exasperated, half affectionate, said, You brat. If you don't take the college entrance exam, when Clara gets to university and sees a better man, she'll dump you. Let's see what you'll do then. I said I'd treat Clara like my own daughter, and she will always be my daughter. Then you can go cool off wherever you like. Alex sprang up as if he'd made up his mind about something, turned and left. Before long he came back carrying a stack of reference books, and from then on he buried himself in study every day. As for Evan and Vivian, that had long ceased to be my concern. But not 2 days later, the detention officers found me and said Evan was insisting on seeing me, no amount of persuasion would change his mind. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to go. Some things need to be settled. In the visiting room, I saw Evan through the thick glass. He wore a prison uniform, his hair disheveled, bruises still lingering on his face, red veins crawling across his eyes, he looked utterly worn out. The moment he saw me, his eyes instantly reddened. He pressed his hand against the glass and, his voice hoarse, asked, Clara, were you the one who saved me in the fire back then? Was it you? I fell silent, and the scene from that day surfaced in my mind. All the adults in the compound had gone to a meeting, and for safety they had gathered the children in my house to stay. We were watching TV at home when Evan suddenly said he was going home to sleep. The other kids were lost in the movie, only I noticed Evan and gave him a nod. But not long after he left, thick smoke suddenly began billowing from the shin house. When I saw it, my mind filled with Evan is inside, and without thinking I ran in. The fire was fierce and the smoke dense, I coughed uncontrollably, but driven by a single determination I found him pinned beneath a plank. I staggered up to Evan when there was a sudden crack above my head. Without a second thought I bent over, shielding him in my arms and took the impact of that board. It hurt, it really hurt. But I couldn't pay it any mind because Evan's leg was still trapped under the plank. After using every ounce of strength to drag the unconscious him out, I collapsed beside him. When I woke up I was already in the hospital, with a burned scar at the nape of my neck. At the time I still thought, as long as Evan was all right. I never imagined he'd mistake the person who saved him for Vivian, much less that we'd end up where we are today. Evan watched my silence as if he'd gotten his answer. Tears suddenly fell. He covered his face, his shoulders shaking uncontrollably. I'm sorry. I can't believe I never knew. He cried for a while, then suddenly lifted his head, a strange light flashing in his eyes. Clara. Let me make it up to you, come with me. I also know a disaster that will befall your father later. If you come with me, I can help your father avoid it. Seeing him look almost delirious, I snorted. Come with you? Pretend to die again, abandon your wife and parents, and live freely on your own? Evan's smile froze, slowly twisting into terror. You're back too? I found it utterly ridiculous. Evan, even after being reborn, you're still the same, always looking down on everyone. Saying you'll make it up to me, yet using my father's situation to blackmail me. Not that you need to worry. I know more than you do. Back on the day I was reborn, I had, by remembering what Alex had told me at my grave in my past life about how he found the evidence to clear his name, tracked down the people who framed my father. By then the man's plan had already reached its midway point, but my father had him intercepted on the spot with men in tow. The crisis was thus averted. Evan's voice trembled, his shoulders slowly slumped. What else do you know? I smiled. I also know that you took Vivian to my grave to beg me, telling me to stay dead and to stop haunting you. Evan, I'm not that cruel. If you hadn't turned up out of the blue, I might never have realized you faked your death to trick me. I looked at him, filled with regret, and took a deep breath. Evan wasn't remorseful for hurting me in a past life, he was remorseful that the things he had lied about were now known to me, and that he could no longer win my forgiveness. Evan, I have a new life now. I don't intend to have anything more to do with your Shin family. From now on, let's each live our own lives in peace. Having said that, I stood up and turned to leave. Half a month passed, and everyone in the compound was talking. On his wedding day Evan was caught and taken to the detention center. He had just been released when he packed his things and immediately applied to go aid Xinjiang. Vivian was the unfortunate one, already unwelcome by her in-laws, and now her husband had run off. Standing by the window, I watched Vivian live the life I once had. There was no hatred in my heart, no resentment, only a sense of release. Alex barreled into the room, exhilarated, scooped me up and spun me around. Clara. We both got in. Seeing the two bright red acceptance letters in his hands, I hugged him back, equally thrilled. Sunlight streamed through the window, warm on my skin. I knew then that from this moment on, I had truly let go of the past and was ready to embrace a brand new future that belonged to Alex and me.